So thank you very much, and also for the opportunity to be without my tie and my jacket. This feels right like Atlanta, right? So thank you. It's a delight to continue our conversations. We started deep, and we are getting ever increasingly wide. We delve deeply into the core empathic skill characteristic of pastoral care and counseling. And then this morning we were talking about when the other is really other and how we seek to extend and, in a sense, do what is both deep and wide with a person or persons that do not share the assumptions, cultural assumptions, ways of thinking, ways of constructing the world, ways of experiencing the world as caregivers. One of the things that Augsburger, who, as I said this morning, coined the phrase interpathy, emphasized was that in interpathic feeling with, and it's really emphasizes the affective dimensions of this. In interpathic feeling with, empathy is extended beyond known borders, says Augsburger, to offer grace that draws no lines, refuses limits, claims universal humanness as sufficient foundation for joining another in a unique world of experience. So interpathy has both cognitive, and it's intentional cognitive. You set out to reach out. But it also has affective, envisioning of others' thoughts, others' feelings from another culture, from another worldview, from another epistemology, another way of knowing, another way of appreciating the world. It is this feeling with the other that is emphasized. And folk who study and learn other languages will often say to you that it is the ability to not only know the technical translations, but it is also the ability to feel into a culture, feel into a different way of thinking. Language frames and shapes ways in which we appreciate the world around us. And so there is a dimension of entering into that is affective. It has to do with feeling and feeling into. So it is like learning a foreign language, taking a foreign perspective, basing thoughts on an assumption which may be foreign to ourselves, and also feeling the resultant feelings and their consequences. And so, particularly, theologically, it is, to me, it has to do with the passion of Christ. You see, it's not only that God in Christ empathizes with the world in coming into a world that is different from God's necessary existence. It's not only that the divine leaves the sublime realm for a season and becomes enfleshed and ensouled within this world, but it's actually that there is a passion, there's a feeling, and this is most highly lifted up in the cross. For in crucifixion, if you like, God experiences the depths of human suffering and human pain, the mess, the sin, and the human reality. It is that which gives us a sense of what it is that we are doing when we encounter another. And it is that kind of communion that I've been speaking about all of them, that communion of beings. When being meets being, and we are able to not only think, but also to feel and spiritually connect. That is that I'm saying is the means by which the Spirit of God in that communion facilitates healing and growth. So both empathy and interpathy are practiced largely with individuals, and the literature as well as the terminology refers most often to work with individuals or with small groups, one-on-one encounters with small groups. However, pastoral counseling, I'm suggesting to you, may be envisaged and may be practiced as counseling for the whole community. The passion of pastoral counselors who envision their practice in these terms is what I would like to describe as a passion for relational holism. The aim of this kind of practice is not the isolated, tough, self-directed, self-regulated individual of Enlightenment rationalism, but it is, to use Goleman's terms, it is the emotionally intelligent persons who are in touch with themselves and who relate effectively and compassionately with others, seeking the well-being of whole communities. The genius is learning to relate well with self and with others. Such counselors do not work in isolation. They respectfully engage the expertise and practice of other helping or healthcare professionals and expect in these teams to be treated in the same way. Matters of faith, matters of belief are important to them, not as impositions from without, but as emanations from within persons in relationship particularly with a self-giving and responsive God. Matters of faith are not solely the preserve of active participants in communities of faith. Whoever wishes to ponder their life circumstances through lenses of significance may find help and support from pastoral counselors. The desire is to find and to help persons find internal, interpersonal, and communal wholeness. An important distinction between individual and person may be helpful in this move. The term individual derives from the idea of there being a unit of life substance that cannot be further subdivided. The individual is the unit of society that cannot be broken down any further, the smallest unit of society. Person, on the other hand, derives from relationship. The Zulu people say a person is a person by reason of other persons. This captures this sense beautifully. We become persons from before the time of our birth through our interactive processes with other persons, by other persons, and with other persons. No one achieves holistic development without the challenges and the joys of interpersonal interaction. As such, the term person is a relational term, and it is in relationship that persons grow and change. Pastoral counseling, which aims at facilitating the growth of whole communities, does so through journeying with persons as they navigate the deep waters of internalized oppression, societal devaluing, and cultural denigration. On the notion of Ubuntu, I would like to have us pay attention to, and maybe even collectively engage in the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Will you read this with me? try to imitate the accent. One of the sayings in our country is Ubuntu, the essence of being human. Ubuntu speaks particularly about the fact that you can't exist as a human being in isolation. It speaks about our interconnectedness. You can't be human all by yourself. And when you have this quality, Ubuntu, you are known for your generosity. We think of ourselves far too frequently as just individuals, separated from one another, whereas you are connected, and what you do affects the whole world. When you do well, it spreads out. It is for the whole of humanity. Zulu concept of person. Zulu concept of wholeness goes from the individual and embraces the whole of community, the whole of humanity. So it is this quest for relational holism that one is speaking about. And communiopathy is entry into the pain and the passion of a whole community. It is, in a sense, an extension of empathy and interpathy into engagement with communities in their communal nature, that which communities share, as well as in their plurality and their variegatedness. Western forms of ministry and engagement have often been characterized as individualistic, reflecting as they do the major cultural patterns of the West. But there is a shared communion that is envisioned and entailed in Ubuntu, that is the lifeblood of these communal cultural groups, which far exceeds the sum of the individual parts or the personal parts. To attentively respond to this communalism, if you like, is what I am seeking to convey. To attentively respond to that which is shared by persons within particular communities. Communiopathy points to an entry into the passion, the pain, and the deep feeling of an entire community. Many black theologians have sought to call people's attention to the experience of being black in a black negating white supremacist world. Communiopathy, in this case, would be an entry into the pain and pathos of the black community, and thus gaining some perspective on the black experience in the world. It is about entering into the collective experience of a whole community, a whole society, a whole community group. And it is a realization that there is a shared communal aspect of the pain of people who have experienced slavery, colonialism, torture, rape, or war. And it is this shared communal aspect that one seeks to enter into. So whether it is one to many or many to many, it is the entry into the history, the story, the experiences, especially the experiences of pain and joy that are a part of a community's heartbeat, a part of the rhythms of the society, a part of the whole lifestyle of a people. And the skills that we have spoken about in terms of empathy and interpathy relate here. They are steps in the direction towards the entry into what is shared in communities, especially communities that have experienced pain and suffering. True pastoral care creates communities. Communities within which acts of personal care and counseling have meaning and significance. I would like to suggest very, very strongly that healthy communities produce healthy people. And just as the expression that is used again and again, hurt people, so also healed people heal people. So it is about the creation of community. And the questions that the communiopathic pastoral care practitioner or practitioners seek to raise has to do with what is shared and how one may enter into, and how may one utilize that to be a means towards healing and wholeness. You see, individuals who receive excellent therapy and whose inner lives are repaired only to return into unwholesome social circumstances will soon become reinfected and need to return for individual therapy. And so the goal here is really to change the circumstances within the communal experience of persons, so that when individuals are worked with, they do not return to social circumstances, communal circumstances that are simply going to crush them again and break them down again. So pastoral counselors who are working with individuals or small groups who are in pain and suffering need to have a leg in or a foot in or a hand in the building of communities, communities of support, communities of health, communities that will be safe places for all, in order that individuals will not keep having to come back into the therapy room because community has failed, because society has crushed them. And this is what it is that we are seeking to speak about and to promote. We need to enter into and to explore the shared thoughts, the shared feelings, the shared behaviors of people defined by particular social and historic realities. The marginalized, the voiceless, the downtrodden, the rich, the poor, groups that share particular experiences of life. We are encouraged and we need to find ways to enter into their experience. Certainly, create those spaces within which such experiences can be spoken about freely and openly and frankly. And I make reference to my colleague and friend, I mentioned him in other conversations, Dr. Greg Ellison, who teaches pastoral care at Chandler and who has been in the forefront of a project which is being termed Fearless Dialogues. And he has been working with people like Parker Palmer and others to create processes by which communities urban communities in this country, particular societies and communities in this country, can engage around, particularly around issues of violence. Inspired by urban violence, this project results in gatherings together of people on different sides of the issue, and promotes ways of creative listening, so that listening becomes not simply the individual or the dyadic thing that we do, but the skills that we acquire through that are transferred to hearing collective pain, hearing collective marginalization, and listening for the pathos that is shared, and then finding ways to ventilate that, and finding ways to talk together to find ways forward. And so, friends, this really is the heart of communiopathy. It is finding ways, and these need to be done, I would suggest, in communities across this nation, as well as across the world. I give examples of both the South African Truth and Reconciliation process and the Liberian processes that derive largely from the Truth and Reconciliation processes of South Africa following the Liberian Civil War, finding ways of the speech or the coming to voice of perpetrators of violence as well as victims of violence in spaces and places where it is possible to move forward. Painful and challenging, but possible to move forward precisely because of what we have learned through empathic and interpathic engagement. So pastoral caregiving has widened its scope of theories, its scope of practices, and its exploratory and explanatory tools. So it has been able to go more deeply into the life experiences of all people. As paradigms of care have included ever-widening circles of practitioners and persons from the clerical, the clinical, the communal, and the cultural perspectives, so the value and impact of the discipline has increased. We are now expanding these core skills of empathy through interpathy into communiopathy. The love of God and neighbor, which are at the heart and soul of Christian faith and practice, calls us in these very directions. God's eternal empathy, expressed through the incarnation. Jesus' life and ministry extended into encounters across ethnic, cultural, and religious boundaries. The love of God is for the whole of human community. And sometimes the whole of human community lives right in our neighborhood. Pastoral caregivers are rightly exploring, and I would say need to do so more and more, exploring more and more how we may be involved in empathic, interpathic, and communiopathic care within an interconnected global community. The goal and passion of pastoral care needs to be harnessed into the creation of community, into the creation of healthy community. just as we seek individuals who are able to live with ambiguity, who are able to live with tension, so ought we not also be seeking healthy communities, communities that are able to live with ambiguity, live with tension, and to work through these towards more life-giving, more humane experiences for all who participate in these situations. This is the call. And the ways in which we do it in our different circumstances and our different communities will be different. For we will want to take into serious consideration context. Storytelling, narrative always is embedded in particular locations and particular contexts. And so we will want to extend ways in which we facilitate stories and narratives in historical contexts, particularly in context of conflict and situations which historically have been conflictual can actually become situations of listening, sharing, caring, and the promotion of healthy community. Without that, what we have is the scabbing of wounds. What we have is wounds that are infected below the surface of the scab. And it only takes a tinder for the scab to be removed and the infection to be manifest. So would to God that we will generate and seek out of the skills that we acquire in the clinical encounter, we would seek to extend these and to work with these within the neighborhoods, within the communities, within the societies, within the faith communities, within the neighborhoods that we live in. What a challenge. What an extension. How deep would our pastoral work be if it was as wide as that? Thank you.